There's a hole in the lawn, smaller than a quarter. You could walk past it 100 times and never see it. Most people do. Then one Saturday afternoon you're pushing a mower, and you find it. Not with your eyes. You find it the hard way. And here's the part I want you to sit with for a second. Most people don't get stung because they didn't know wasps existed. They get stung because of what they did next. And what they did next felt completely reasonable at the time. They grabbed the garden hose. They dropped a flat rock over the opening. They waited until dark and clicked on a flashlight. Some of them walked back to the garage and picked up the gas can. And one of the things people do to feel safer at night can end up putting the brightest object in the entire yard about 18 inches from their own face. I'll come back to that one, I promise. 10 mistakes. We're counting down from 10. And the last one on the list is the reason some nests should never become a weekend project at all. Let's start with number 10, because it happens before anybody touches anything. Mistake number 10 is assuming that every ground nest is a yellowjacket nest. You see insects going in and out of the ground, and your brain files the whole thing under one word: wasps. But a lot of different creatures live in the dirt in an American yard, and they are not remotely the same problem. Yellowjackets look smooth and sharp, hard yellow and black. And the giveaway isn't the insect, it's the pattern. Steady two-way traffic through one opening, in, out, all day, like a little airport. Ground nesting bees look fuzzier, dustier. They're often carrying pollen on their legs. And instead of one busy doorway, you'll see a scatter of separate little holes, sometimes dozens of them, each one belonging to a single female raising her own young. No colony, no guards. A lot of the insects you see flying around are males, and males can't sting at all. Then there are solitary wasps. And this is where people get it exactly backwards. Some of the most alarming-looking insects in the whole yard are solitary wasps. Big, loud. They fly right at you. And they're a single female with a single burrow and nothing behind her to defend. The scary-looking one is often the one to leave alone. The one to respect is the smaller, tidier insect disappearing calmly into one hole in the grass. And while we're here, those little volcano mounds of soil that show up in April and make people reach for a spray can. Those bees aren't destroying your lawn. They're using a spot where the turf was already thin and dry and bare. The mound isn't the problem. It's the receipt. Thicken that patch of grass, keep it watered, and the invitation quietly disappears on its own. One rule before we go further. You don't need to walk up to a hole to figure out what's in it. Everything I just described, you can see from 20 feet away. Which brings us to mistake number 9, judging the size of the colony by the size of the hole. The opening looks small, so the problem must be small. That's the assumption, and it's the one that gets people hurt. Judging that colony by the entrance is like judging the size of a house by its mailbox. Here's why. Yellowjackets usually don't excavate a home from scratch. They move into something that's already there, an abandoned rodent burrow, a gap under a landscape timber, a void beside a step or a slab, and then they enlarge it, season after season, as the colony grows. What you're looking at is the front door of a space you can't see, and depending on the species, the season, and where you live, what's behind that door can range from a few hundred insects to a few thousand. Sometimes there's more than one door. And in a few minutes, I'm going to show you why plugging that tiny opening solves exactly the wrong problem. Hold that thought. Mistake number 8, discovering the nest with your mower. Because here's the truth about how people actually get stung in this country. It's almost never someone bravely fighting wasps. It's someone doing a chore. Mowing. Running a string trimmer along a fence line, pruning a shrub, raking under a tree. You're loud, you're vibrating the ground, and you're standing 3 feet from a colony you never knew existed. From the colony's point of view, that's an attack. So here's the single most useful habit in this entire video. I call it the 30-second lawn scan. Before you mow, during the warm part of the year when these colonies are active, you stand at the edge of the yard, engine off, and give it 30 seconds. You're not looking for a hole. You'll never spot a hole from there. You're looking for traffic. Repeated insect movement at ground level, in and out of the same spot, over and over. One bug flying past means nothing. A little highway means something. And you look where the cavities are, bed edges, fence lines, the base of shrubs, that strip of neglected ground along the shed, old burrows. Anywhere the mower doesn't usually go. If you see that traffic, the whole plan is simple. Shut it down. Keep people and pets off that part of the yard. Note roughly where it is, from where you're standing. And make your decision later, with a clear head, instead of at full throttle with a machine in your hands. What you don't do is walk over there to get a better look. 30 seconds. No cost, no equipment. That one habit prevents more stings than anything else I'm going to tell you today. Mistake number 7. Treating an active colony in the middle of the day. Most people have heard you should deal with a nest at night, and there's a real reason behind it. During the day, foragers are streaming in and out constantly, and there's no way to know how many are away from home and about to come back to the spot you're standing on. Later in the evening, flight activity drops off. More of the colony is inside. But I want to be careful with the language here because a lot of videos aren't. Night doesn't make a yellowjacket nest safe. It changes the odds. Those are two very different sentences. And the guidance isn't even uniform. Some extension programs point to late evening. Others suggest just before dawn, when the insects are sluggish after a cool night. It depends on the species and on where you live. Which sets up mistake number 6 perfectly. And this is the one I teased at the beginning. Mistake number 6 is putting your light in the worst possible place. Picture someone who did everything right. Waited until the activity dropped, dressed properly, moved slowly, and then strapped a bright headlamp to their forehead and switched it on. Because here's what a lot of people never learn. Yellowjackets disturbed in the dark tend to move toward light. That's the reflex. So if the brightest thing in the yard is bolted to your head, you've just told an agitated colony exactly where to go. The guidance from several extension programs is consistent on this. Don't shine a beam directly into the opening. Set the light on the ground, off to one side, so it isn't attached to your body. And red light is far less stimulating than white light. Now, I'm not telling you this so you'll go out and try it tonight. I'm telling you because wait until dark is the advice everybody repeats, and it's only half of the sentence. The other half is where you stand and where your light is. Mistake number 5. Trying to flood an established nest. The hose. A 5-gallon bucket, a pot of boiling water off the stove. I understand the appeal completely. It feels natural. No chemicals. Nothing to buy. But natural doesn't automatically mean safe, and it definitely doesn't mean effective. Water follows the easiest path it can find. The nest chamber may sit off to the side of the tunnel, or up under a root, or deeper than your water is ever going to reach. You can soak that opening for 10 minutes and never touch the colony. What you will do, reliably, is announce yourself. And boiling water adds a hazard that has nothing to do with insects. You're carrying a pot of scalding water across uneven grass, hands full, toward a hole that may start producing very upset wasps. That's how people end up with burns on top of stings. Does it ever work? On a tiny, shallow, brand new nest in early summer, sometimes. But a method that occasionally works on a small young colony in June is not a strategy for a mature colony in September. Those are two different animals living in the same hole. Which brings us to mistake number 4, and this is the one where I stop being gentle. Gasoline, diesel, lighter fluid, fire. This is the mistake that gives you 2 emergencies instead of 1. Think about what's actually happening. You're pouring a fuel down a hole, in a yard, and the fumes don't stay in the hole. They spread. Now you have vapor at ground level, dry grass, maybe a wooden deck, maybe a propane tank, maybe a fence, and a colony of insects that has just been thoroughly provoked. Every ignition source in that yard is now a problem, and even if nothing catches, you've contaminated the soil. Nothing grows in that spot for a long time. It moves toward a vegetable bed, toward a well cap, toward a storm drain. Here's the part that gets me. This isn't new information. There's a United States Department of Agriculture handbook on yellowjackets that came out in 1980, the year some of you were teaching your kids to mow, and it was already telling people this. 45 years later, the gas can still comes out of the garage. In some places, pouring fuel down a nest hole isn't just dangerous. It's against the law. And I'll say the simplest version of it. If your plan requires you to stand over a hole full of defensive insects while holding fuel, the wasps are no longer your biggest problem. But I want to tell you something. The mistake that worries me most on this list isn't gasoline. It isn't boiling water. It isn't even the mower. It doesn't involve touching the nest at all. We'll get there. First, mistake number 3. And this is the one I promised you. Sealing or burying the entrance and calling it solved. The logic is beautiful. If they can't get out, the problem's over. Drop a paving stone on it. Shovel dirt in. Stuff it with foam. But closing the front door is not the same thing as removing what lives behind it. Remember, they moved into a cavity that already existed. Cavities have soft spots, side channels, loose fill, sometimes a second opening you never found. Insects that dig for a living can work around a rock. And there's a worse version. If that cavity happens to connect to something, under a step, along a foundation, into a wall void, behind siding, sealing the outside opening can push them in the direction you least want them to go, which is inward. Now, I don't want to hand you an absolute rule, because sealing does have a place. Closing off an old animal burrow or an empty cavity in a high-traffic part of the yard before nesting season, when nothing is living in it, that's genuinely useful prevention. Same action, completely different meaning. Sealing is a prevention tool. It is not a solution tool. The difference is entirely in the timing. Mistake number 2, fighting the workers instead of understanding the colony. You see Yellowjackets on the patio, so you spray the ones you can see. You hang a trap by the picnic table. A week later, there are fewer of them, and it feels like you're winning. The insects you can see aren't necessarily the problem. They're the commuters. Now, traps aren't useless. I want to be fair here. They can genuinely cut down on nuisance foragers around an eating area, and they can tell you that activity in your yard is picking up. That's real value. But a trap full of wasps is not an empty nest. The colony keeps producing. And here's the flip side, which is just as useful. A few Yellowjackets around your picnic table does not mean there's a nest under your picnic table. Foragers out looking for food are generally far less defensive than the ones guarding a doorway. Same insect, completely different job. That's why you can eat lunch beside one and never get stung, then step on a hole 40 feet away and get stung 11 times. And this leads somewhere most people never think about. The most useful time to pay attention to Yellowjackets may be the time of year when nobody's thinking about Yellowjackets at all. Early in the season, an overwintered queen is starting the whole cycle by herself. One insect, no workers, nothing to defend. Depending on your region, your climate, and the species you have, early season attention, trapping, watching, noticing cavities, can matter more than everything you do in late August. I'm not going to promise you that catching one queen prevents one nest. Nobody can promise that. But I'll put it this way. The smartest thing you ever do about a wasp problem in August may happen in April, in a yard where there is no wasp problem yet. All right. Mistake number 1, and it's the one I told you doesn't involve touching the nest at all. Mistake number 1 is assuming that because it's your yard, it's automatically your job. There's a kind of pride in that, and I understand it. You've fixed the fence, patched the roof, hauled the brush. Why pay somebody to handle a hole in your own lawn? Because sometimes the most skilled thing an experienced person does is not do it. So here's a test you can run in about 10 seconds, standing at your kitchen window. 4 letters. S-T-O-P. S is for sensitive person. Anybody in the household with a known serious venom allergy or a health condition that makes a bad reaction more dangerous. If that's your house, this isn't your project. That's not caution. That's arithmetic. T is for traffic. Is that hole beside a doorway, a walkway, a patio, the mailbox path, the spot where the grandkids play, or where the dog goes out at 6 in the morning? A nest in the back corner of 2 acres is a different situation than a nest by the front steps. O is for out of reach, or uncertain. It's in a wall void, under a deck, in a structure. Or you can't find all the openings. or you honestly aren't sure what's in there. Uncertainty is a stop condition all by itself. P is for persistent. You've already tried something and there's still activity, or the activity is heavier than you expected, or the situation keeps turning out to be bigger than you thought. If any one of those is true, calling a licensed pest management professional isn't giving up. It's the correct answer. It's the same decision you'd make about a gas line or a breaker panel. Knowing the edge of your own expertise is expertise. And I'll say the harder thing too. Sometimes the right answer isn't a professional either. Sometimes it's a length of orange flagging tape, a wide detour for a few weeks, and a note on the calendar. A nest out in an unused corner, hurting nobody, is allowed to just be a nest. 2 quick things before we close, and they matter more than any of the 10. If a nest ever does get disturbed while you're out there, leave immediately. Move away in a straight line, get distance, get inside a building or a vehicle and shut the door. Don't stand your ground and swat, because that makes it worse. And don't jump into a pond or a pool. You have to come up eventually. Distance is the entire strategy. That's it. And know what turns a yard problem into a medical one. Watch the airway and the whole body. Trouble breathing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, or throat, dizziness or fainting, hives spreading to parts of the body nowhere near the sting. Severe symptoms that affect the whole system rather than just the spot. Those are emergency signs. That's a call for emergency care, not a wait and see. And if you or someone in your household has a known serious venom allergy, you follow the plan your own doctor gave you, including any prescribed epinephrine. I'm a gardener, not a physician, and this is one place where the only right advice is your own doctor's. One last thing, and it might be the most useful idea in the whole video. It's the same hole all year, but it's a completely different problem depending on the month. In spring, it's a single queen and a nest the size of a walnut. Through summer, the population builds. By late summer and fall, the colony is at its largest, food is getting scarce, and defensive behavior tends to increase. That's when the stings happen. Now, in most of the country, cold weather ends those colonies and the nest isn't reused. But don't turn that into a national rule, because it isn't one. In areas with very mild winters, some colonies can carry over and get considerably larger than what most people picture. Where you live changes the answer. The safest ground nest problem to solve in August is usually the one you noticed in May. So, 3 things to carry out to the garage with you. Identify before you act. Don't turn a nest problem into a fire, a fall, or a medical problem. And know when walking away is the skilled decision, not the cowardly one. Now, I know perfectly well that nobody remembers 19 minutes of anything while they're standing in the yard with the mower running and insects coming out of the grass. So I took the parts that are hardest to remember in that exact moment. How to tell a yellow jacket from a ground bee, the 30-second scan, the 10 things not to do, the stop test, and the sting warning signs, and I put them on one printable ground nest safety card. It's free, the link's below, and it belongs on the garage wall next to where the mower lives. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. If you've ever found a ground nest the hard way, what were you doing when you found it? Mowing, trimming, gardening, walking the dog, something else entirely? And do you remember what month it was? Because when a few hundred of you answer that, the pattern in those comments is going to be more useful to the next person than anything I could tell them. Take care of yourselves out there. Watch the traffic, not the hole.